welcome back to this session of Observations. We're going to pick up where we left off last night in the Blog Talk Radio Yahowah program, but that was actually a bit of a retreat from where we were in this program a week ago, which is right around Proverbs 7, 8. But before I do, I would be remiss if I didn't share an item that just came across the news wires. Another professor, another writer, has been hacked to death with machetes in Bangladesh. Muslims have routinely, and it seems to happen like every 3 or 4 months, they single an author or professor out, and they attack the defenseless individual with axes, swords, and machetes. Now, first of all, to hack someone to death requires somebody being so perverse, so despicable, so inhuman, is that the whole world should be screaming, what drives someone to this deplorable condition? And when the common denominator is always the same, Islam, the same religion that ties people up and slits their throats, while shouting Allahu Akbar and citing Quran verses, the whole world ought to be disgusted by a religion that would drive people to this state. But it gets worse. This man was hacked to death because he was promoting atheist ideas according to the Islamic State in Bangladesh. He's not even an atheist. His activities were to sponsor music productions and to review music performances. And it gets worse than that. Last week, the Prime Minister of this disgusting Muslim hellhole known as Bangladesh issued a stern warning to anyone who criticized his religion. I don't consider such writings as free thinking, but as filthy words. Why would anyone write such words? It's not acceptable if anyone writes against our prophet. God, it makes me sick. First of all, Muhammad was not a prophet. And second of all, his Quran is the filthiest, most repulsive document ever attributed to God. And to say that you can't criticize him when he was a pedophile, when he was a rapist, when he was a terrorist, when he was a slave trader, when he was a mass murderer, says that you are so warped, so twisted by religion, so empowered by that religion, that you've lost all sense of human decency. Now, that's my thoughts.
Yeah. When the Western world reports on something like that, and doesn't anyone ever beg the question, I mean, what then can you criticize if you can't criticize Muhammad?
For example, you know, when Muslims butchered the people associated with Charlie Hebdo because they drew a cartoon showing that Muhammad was an inspiration for Islamic terrorism. And there are idiots in the West so deprived of reason, so deprived of morality, that said, you know, they shouldn't be doing that. That's hateful. You know, that they had no right to criticize another religion's prophet. Let's say that Muhammad really was a nice guy. Now, he was the antithesis of that. Muhammad was the ultimate perverted scumbag. There is no one in all of human history who is as vile as Muhammad. He was absolutely the worst of the worst. I mean, you can't be worse than pedophilia unless it's rape. And he was engaged in rape and pedophilia and sadistic tortures. And of the 75 terrorist raids he led, every single one of them was against civilians. He was a ruthless and despicable terrorist. And to suggest that holding him and the religion that he conceived accountable for the enslavement and gang rape of little girls around the world, and of the fact that they inspire 99% of the world's terrorist acts, to say that you ought not hold Muhammad and Islam accountable for that, and that if you write about the truth about Islam, you ought to be gunned down or butchered to death, you've got it coming, just shows you how far politicians and journalists have fallen the world over.
It's incomprehensible. That, okay, if somebody says he's a terrorist, and then you go kill him,
right?
Innocent people, and then they blame you. That's so insane.
You know, I have a real affinity for the actual God. His name is Yahowah, as you guys know.
Yes.
And I do not care. It would bother me not in the least if my next door neighbor, or a fellow on a street corner, or the professor of a university, or the President of the United States went on a tirade to demean and discredit Yahowah. Wouldn't bother me in the least. That idiot's view of Yahowah doesn't affect who he is, doesn't affect what I know of him, doesn't affect my relationship with him. I wouldn't care. I wouldn't even give the person the time of day. And to think that if you were a Muslim and someone actually told the truth about your wannabe prophet, that your response would be to hack them to death and to celebrate it, to take credit for it.
Prove the point of what you are.
I'll make one addendum to what you just said, just for myself personally.
Yeah.
If they take who he is and they change it and then they lead people astray, that bothers me. The Roman Catholic Church has done that for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
That bothers me a lot.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I've never wanted to hack anybody to death. I've never wanted to do anything.
I don't care that the Roman Catholic Church outlawed the use of Yahowah's name any place in their religion. I don't care. Really don't care. Doesn't bother me in the least. Do I know that God's going to hold them accountable for that, for their despicable behavior, for creating the beast that God specifically identifies as the whore of Babylon? God's told us exactly what he's going to do to the Roman Catholic Church.
Well,
so my animosity towards them would be a waste of time. But the fact is that just because I'm disgusted by them, as is God, the response isn't to go and hack the Pope to death.
Well, and that might be part of the thing for me though, is he's already told me what's going to happen. He told me, and he's never told me, hack people to death if they use my name, if they don't use my name, or if they.
Right.
He's just said to me, "This is what I'm going to do. Right. You make sure you hold my name in high regard."
Right. And he wants us to speak out against.
Yeah, that's words.
Words against the whore of Babylon, which is Roman Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
He wants us to speak out against it. He wants us to speak out of a religion that is overtly satanic. Islam. Allah is Satan. He wants us to do that with our words. It's the way that he communicates, is with words. And because these religions are all satanic, it's not about words. It's about hacking people to death. When God perpetrated the flood, the reason he perpetrated the flood, in his own explanation, was that because mankind had become so violent to his fellow man, God just couldn't bear it anymore. He just said that everybody is out hacking everybody else to death. I'm just disgusted by the whole lot of it. Why did I create this being to have a relationship with when everyone apart from 8 people are out brutalizing one another? And now you look at Islam. And all good Muslims are terrorists. They're brutal. And, it's just like Muhammad. Today's Islamic terrorists, they don't go attack military installations. No. They suicide bomb civilians.
Mm-hmm. Use their own people.
Yeah, they cut off, they kidnap little girls and rape them. They always take the cowardly, disgusting, despicable position of using armed force against defenseless individuals. There's no courage in that. There's no honor in that. It just shows how warped, how terribly malignant all religion is, but particularly Islam. I was reading an article today, and I think it was the Washington Post was doing a review of a fellow who had recently published a book about the complete and utter failures of American diplomacy and military interventionism, and said that America had made a shift between intervening in its economic interests. America, the empire of America is based upon its use of the military to compel the kind of trade arrangements that it desires. And it said that it went from that to nation building. And this fellow saying that trend to nation building has been wholly and completely counterproductive. That there isn't a single success with all of the military invasions that America has participated in, starting with and including the Vietnam War, but most especially the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. And the writer goes on to say, he says, that there was no chance of imposing democracy in Iraq because the culture was immunized against it. And he didn't say that because Islam means submission and that the Quran says there's no choice for Muslims. Didn't go that far, but that's what the Quran says. But the person who wrote the article says, to demean an entire culture this way is to render the work meaningless. As if this individual had any clue as to what Islam was about. There's a reason that democracy will not work in an Islamic country. Muslims are incapable of operating in a democracy. The religion makes it impossible. Every good Muslim will tell you that. The Quran will tell you that. And you read this kind of rubbish from alleged journalists and publications like the Washington Post, and you just scratch your head and say, why do people pretend to be experts on things they know nothing about? Why are people wholly and completely incapable of being rational, of looking at the common denominator of the 50-some-odd Islamic countries and recognizing there's not a functional democracy in the bunch and that the vast preponderance of them are fascists? And they're all hugely behind the rest of the world in terms of any kind of freedoms and education and economic development.
Or common decency.
Or common decency, yes. The women are treated worse than America treated slaves back 200 years ago.
And even worse, the women here actually defend them on that.
You've got over 200 million little girls around the world today that have been sexually mutilated by their mothers. All Muslims. And no one seems to be able to make the connection of maybe the religion is the problem. Tens of thousands of little girls in Nigeria and Syria have been kidnapped, enslaved, turned into sex slaves by Islamic jihadists. They're auctioned off during Quran readings, justifying the practice. And no one wants to hold Islam accountable? What in the world has happened to people's ability to think, to be rational? to find the common denominator. You know, we can talk until we're blue in the face about what Yahowah has to say. But if the vast preponderance of people have, as it appears to be, have lost the ability to exercise good judgment, to be reasonable, to be rational, to be discerning, to be discriminating, to discern right from wrong, good from bad, then it's an utter waste of time. Yahowah made the statement.
Somebody out there.
Yeah, well, there are a few. That's kind of why he said that 1 in a million take advantage of his mercy. Yeah. Now, this is interesting. I want to go back to the previous verse to what we were going to start with, and it reads as follows: "For in and by the window of my house," this is Yahowah speaking. This would be the home of the covenant. "Through my lattice, denoting the proper timing of things, from a higher elevation I looked down, and I saw with her." Her now is the whore. Yahowah identifies this whore not with sex, with religion, with Babylon, with Satan, and most specifically, the beast that grew out of imperial Rome, which is the largest religious institution on earth, the Roman Catholic Church. He says, "I looked down and I saw with her," the whore, "were the simple-minded and the naive, petty, the easily deceived, malleable, and readily persuaded, the ignorant and the irrational, all with deficient judgment, the foolish." It's from patah, airheads who are gullible, simply enticed, and readily misled and betrayed. That is the common denominator of all religious individuals. They are ignorant and irrational. There isn't a single Muslim or Christian or evangelical atheist on the planet who is informed and rational. To be informed and rational about the religion of Christianity, atheism, secular humanism, and Islam is to be opposed to those religions. They are absolutely, irrefutably, undeniably false and counterproductive. And so, if you're dumb enough to play along with something that is obviously false and to believe it to be beneficial and true, then you're an airhead. That's what God is saying. That with the whore of religion, and that's specifically Roman Catholicism and therefore Christianity, the followers are thoughtless, simpletons, unthinking. Because if they were able to think, they wouldn't be Christians. They wouldn't be Muslims. I mean, the Quran is the worst book ever written. Muhammad, easily the most despicable man who ever lived.
No argument.
I mean, to be a woman and play religious dress-up as a Muslim, following the godly advice of a man who is a pedophile and rapist, a sexual pervert, shows that you are absolutely out of your ever-loving mind. That you might have a brain between your ears, but it's unused.
Sorry, don't mean to laugh.
Yeah, but it's true. It's true. To play Islamic religious dress-up as a woman when the founder of the religion was a pedophile and rapist and sexual pervert, and terrorist and mass murderer and slave trader, you have to be out of your ever-loving mind.
Yeah.
But when you realize that Christianity's New Testament is completely and totally in conflict with Yahowah's Torah, prophets, and Psalms, and yet it claims to be inspired by the same God, and the primary author of the New Testament called God's Torah impotent, pornography, incapable of saving. When the person that they name themselves after, although it's a Greek title, Christian, said exactly the opposite. So you've got Yahowah, who they don't even know his name. They call him Jesus. There was no Jesus. Said not a single letter in any one of the words that comprise any of the statements in the totality of the Torah will be annulled so long as the heavens and earth exists. And you've got Paul in his 13 letters annulling all of it. Every last word of it. And you're not capable of saying, wait a minute, those two things are not compatible? That's an irresolvable conflict. How can I call myself a Christian and oppose everything the man said? How am I to believe that God was incapable of creating a plan that would save me, and that another pervert, Paul, who was by his own admission demon-possessed, was capable of it and was inspired by God to renounce everything that he had done to come up with an entirely different plan? And that's somehow credible to you? It's credible to you that your God died, that man was able to kill your God, and that that's somehow a benefit to you? That God says don't emulate the way of the Gentile nations, and yet you celebrate Easter and Christmas? Which are Babylonian holidays? You're out of your mind? That's what God says. So with her, a bunch of morons. God's got no interest, by the way, in morons. Now, I want to be really careful here. My brother, mentally handicapped. I know a lot of many mentally handicapped men and women. They're the most likable, lovable individuals on the planet. They have an innate understanding, really, of what matters in life. God's not opposed to them. But those who are born with a capacity to think and who have just chosen not to, squandered it, he has no interest in. God is extraordinarily intellectual. He is brilliant. And you know something that people who like learning, who like to be inspired with new ideas, enjoy?
They enjoy the Torah.
Well, and they also enjoy the company of others.
Others that do so as well.
Yeah, who enjoy these things as well. And you know, if you've come to understand something, like, you know, I've studied Islam. I know the religion probably as well, if not better, than anyone alive. Really understand who Muhammad was.
No doubt.
And one of the very few people that's actually taken the Quran, put it in chronological order, and set it into the context of Muhammad's life, using the two chronological depictions of Islam's creation, the Tarikh history of Islam and the Sirah biography of Muhammad. And so I don't think there's anybody that understands Muhammad and Islam and Allah better than I do. I'd be surprised if there's anyone on the planet.
Well, especially with your backdrop in the Torah as well.
Yeah, and because now I know Hebrew, and I know the Torah, and I know that the Quran was actually written in Hebrew, not Arabic, and that its primary claim is that it confirms the Torah and was inspired by the same God, when in fact it contradicts everything in the Torah. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone that understands the religion better than I do.
I think not.
But you know, when I talk to somebody who is reasonable and rational and is interested in learning and has done a bit of study, I find it stimulating. When I talk to somebody who just is thoughtless, you know, I don't care, I know a Muslim, they're a nice person, and so forth, I just don't want to even contemplate any of this, and, you know, surely all Muslims aren't bad people. You talk to somebody that just is incapable of rational thought. And you get about a minute into that conversation, you say, what am I doing here?
Mm-hmm.
This is repulsive. You know, I think I'd rather have a conversation with a garden slug. I'm sure that's how God feels. So anyway, God says, with the whore of religion, the simple-minded and naive. And then he says, and I made the connection, understanding and recognizing that among the children was a young man of deficient character, lacking judgment. Well, so who do you think that young man might be? And if you were a Christian, wouldn't you say, boy, wait a minute, God is saying if I'm religious, I must be a moron. And he said that the antidote for moronity, for being a moron, is to observe the Torah and particularly the portions of the Torah that speak about the conditions of the covenant. That's the first 5 statements in Proverbs 7 is you want to live? You want to have a productive life?
Go there.
Observe the Torah. Observe my promises. Observe my testimony. Observe. Doesn't mean keep. Doesn't mean obey.
No.
It means to use your eyes to read, your ears to listen, your mind to contemplate what you see and what you hear. That's what observing means.
Mm-hmm. Then turn your way of thinking.
Right.
Right.
And so that's the antidote for this. And so he's presented that. Now you're a Christian and you read this. This is the young man. And then at the end of this psalm, the man name is provided.
For those of you
who are slow on the uptake, the man's name is provided. And lo and behold, it's the author of your New Testament.
Yeah.
And you say, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Houston, we have a problem.
Well, here's a clue. The young man lacking is chesser.
Mm-hmm.
One of the meanings of chesser is to decrease, diminish, become empty, made him lower, deprived in quality and quality.
We're talking about lowly and little here, aren't we?
Yeah.
And okay, Shaul, for those that don't know, was actually the birth name, the given name of the author of half the Christian New Testament.
Right.
In fact, he admits his name was Shaul because twice during the encounter that he had on the road to Damascus, which was with Satan, by the way, Satan says, Shaul, Shaul, calls him out by name. So his name was Shaul. But he chose a Roman name. Now, according to God, when you read, now it doesn't matter if you're reading Revelation, or if you're reading Daniel, or you're reading Isaiah, or Jeremiah.
Mm-hmm.
The whore of Babylon is the birthplace of satanic religions like Christianity and Islam. God's very clear that Babylon evolved into Persia, and Persia evolved into Greece, and that Greece evolved into Imperial Rome, and Imperial Rome evolved into the beast of Roman Catholicism. So it puts you in really quite a quandary here, because Paul chose a Roman name.
Mm-hmm. And
Apollos. Yeah, and what does that Roman name mean?
Means lowly and little.
Yeah, and that's how he's just described this individual that has deficient character, isn't it?
Yes. Hundreds of years before he came on the scene.
Yeah, this would have been written 1,000 years before. This was written in all likelihood by Dode, right around 1000 BCE. And Apollos came on the scene around 36, maybe 37 CE. Yeah, 1,000 years. We'll be back after the break. On this program and on the Shabbat program on Friday evenings on Blog Talk Radio, Yahowah Radio, we have delineated the 5 insights associated with 7-4. And so I will not go over all of them again, but I do want to mention two of them. The first of all, for God to say that he looked out of the window of his home and he saw the whore and the feeble-minded with her, along with the young man, the lowly and little one of deficient character, screams one thing that is extraordinarily important and seldom understood. It may be the most important insight that I could provide for anyone, or that God could provide for anyone regarding religion. And it's right here in your face, and I don't think there's one person in a million that sees it. What do you think that might be, fellas?
Well, it's obviously that, well, I mean, I just see Babylon right there, and I see Paul leading the way, and as one,
if God says, I look through the window of my home, which is the covenant, in heaven, and I saw right outside.
Oh, you mean so close to, in close proximity?
Right, yeah, the whore of religion, and the feeble-minded along with her. What does that mean about religion?
It means that it has to attach to and be a counterfeit of in order to sell it.
Right. That Satan doesn't promote religion the way people think. That, that he has occultic, sadistic seances, and that he wants to be worshipped in a Satanic cult fashion.
No.
He doesn't want to be worshipped as Satan. He doesn't even want to be known as Satan. He hates the Satan title. He wants to be worshipped as God. There's only one God. He knows it. And so every one of his lies, every one of his distortions is piled right next to the truth. It's a counterfeit. It's a twisting. And by doing that, he fools people into believing that Satan is God. They even call him by name, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
That's Satan's name.
Yes.
And so, and Allah, in the Quran, Allah spends all of his time in hell.
Yes.
He's interested in torturing. That's what he's spending his time doing, torturing people in hell. His only guaranteed admittance into his brothel, which is a place of drunken orgies, where virgins are routinely ravaged, is so demonic, so twisted, that it's obvious that the God of Islam, Allah, is Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And yet 1.2 billion people prostrate themselves to Satan as if he were God.
5 times a day.
Yes. And one of the passages I translated yesterday, God said, I am opposed to, and it's translated the oaks of Bashan. God's got nothing against an oak, and no one even knows what a Bashan is in the terms of a location. And what it really says, I'm opposed to, the Hebrew word for oak is Allah. I'm opposed to Allah, and Bashan means because he's a serpent, he's a snake, because he's satanic.
He slithers, sneaks upon.
Oh, man, he's venomous, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so God's really clear about this, folks. Satan pretends to be God. Christianity gained its credibility and appeal by placing its lies right on top of the truth. Their Good Friday replaces Passover.
Yeah.
Their Easter replaces Bikurim. Their Sunday replaces the Shabbat. That every aspect of it. Their Jesus replaces Yosha, which is Yahowah saving us. Their New Testament replaces the covenant. It is a subtle twist and counterfeit that is designed to make satanic worship appear credible. You know, the sacrificial lamb does give up its life on Passover for immortality.
Right.
That doesn't mean God dies.
No. God is gone.
Oh, my goodness, folks.
You already said, why you left me?
Yeah, what's the problem with thinking here? But that's the nature of religion. That's what God is saying, is that the whore of religion, particularly as the whore religion is depicted as Christianity, looks right outside of the covenant. But it is absolutely outside. You know, we've talked about this before. You're an artist. If you were to devote yourself to making a nearly perfect $100 bill, what is that bill worth?
It's nothing unless I can pass it.
And if you get caught with it, it will cost you your freedom.
No, you have to be.
It's a liability. It can be 99.999% the same, and it's still a liability.
Yes.
Well, Christianity is not anywhere close to 99.9% similar.
But they couldn't sell it if they couldn't piggyback on the Torah.
That is correct. It is conceived to be a counterfeit. It's a bogus bill.
And that's what al-Rassooli is. That's what the word means.
Yes. Exactly.
I mean, he uses all the right words. You look up all the words, and they say exactly what you're saying. It's not made up. We're not stretching anything. I'm not twisting anything to make it fit. You know, this is it's real clear.
Yep. Then he says, passing in the street, beside her corner. This is that one who lacks character, the lowly and little one. He strides. Walking is part of a growing group along the path of her house. Now, was there anything walking that would be distinct about Paul, the founder of the Christian religion?
He was big on journeys. You know,
he was.
Place to place to place to place, spreading his gospel.
Yeah, that was that, man. The whole book of Acts is about the long walk Paul took through the Gentile world. In fact, he claimed the Gentiles all for himself, and his missionary journeys define him.
You know, speaking of the journey, the pathway, the journey that he's taken is also written the same way. It means to trod down, to tread upon with intent to harm.
Yeah.
I mean, my God.
Yeah, and what is, you know what Yahowah actually says about the beast that grows out of the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church? When he is critical of them, do you know what his criticism is? He says they tread upon the whole earth.
The whole world.
Tread upon.
Right.
Step upon. You know, Yahowah wants us to be able to step up, to stand up. Yeah. And the worst thing is to step on somebody, to prevent them from being able to stand up. And he says the Roman Catholicism, it treads upon the whole world. And here, this person whom he will introduce as Sheol, Paul, is treading upon the world, holding them down because he's precluding them from knowing God. And it's, of course, his strides. Walking is part of a growing group. Sa'ad travels in her direction while pursuing her mission and goals. You know, we talked about this now on two different occasions. But Paul specifically, in two of his letters, says that he took people to Satan.
Oh, yes.
He in one letter he says, "I want you to take them to Satan," speaking of his believers. And he says, "I've judged him already, but you take him to Satan. So Satan will save him." Yeah, Satan will save him. And then another one he says, "I've already taken them to Satan."
Yeah, well, you know where he is.
Yeah, of course. And then another letter he says that Satan has possessed him. That the goad, the thorn in his side, is a demon from Satan.
I guess the preachers forgot to bring that part up.
Yeah.
Yes, he's so stupid.
Just before the dark of night, depicting the twilight of one's conscience and the fading of their soul. As the light fades after sundown at the end of the day, at the pupil of night, there is total darkness and doom. When behold, a woman approaches to issue an invitation to meet him, outfitted in the garments of a prostitute, a harlot and whore. And she is crafty and concealed, underhanded and evil, of heart, character, of motives, and of judgment. So now what we're talking about is the whore, which God says, you have any question about this? Read Revelation 17, 18, and 19. I read it last night on our Shabbat program.
Uh-huh.
The whore is Roman Catholicism. The whore is the Babylonian religion as is manifest in Christianity. And so we have here, in the dark of night, a place where there is no light, as the soul begins to fade, the light diminishing after sundown.
Mm-hmm.
The pupil night, the darkest part of night.
Let me toss one thing in on pupil.
Uh-huh.
One of the definitions of Ishon is the middle of the eye, the pupil, black, darkest part,
Mm-hmm.
on and on and on, charring from afar, deep black. It also means the little man of the eye.
Back to Paul.
Maybe I'm touching a little bit, but that's what the lexicon says. So I just write them down.
When behold, a woman approaches, dressed as a whore. So what he's saying here is that when Paul was on this journey, remember, walking in the streets, on the road to Damascus,
yes,
that the whore, Satan, appeared to him. And she approached outfitted in the garments of a whore, but crafty, concealed, underhanded. Which means that she didn't say, "Hey, Shaul, I'm the whore of Babylon. Shaul, I am Satan. I'm the adversary." And, we both have an issue with God. And we don't like God's creation, mankind, very much either. You were drummed out of rabbinical school. Your father sent you off away from home because he didn't like your sorry tale either. So we got an issue with man, and we both have an issue with God. So I'm Satan, and so why don't we team up? I'll make you one of the most famous people in all of human history. You can be the founder of a religion, and we'll work together. That's not how Satan approached him, was it?
No, he was cunning. That's far.
Right. Did Satan approach Yahowah, there's no Eve, Yahowah in the garden by saying, did he slither in as a snake and say, better watch out for my bite? I am the adversary. I'm the one he's been warning you about.
No, that was the exit, not the entrance. The entrance
that is
was grand.
Came in grand, beautiful. Came in quoting God, twisting what he had to say, just like Paul. The ploy that Satan used in the garden against Yahowah is the exact one he deployed again with Paul. Quote what God says, take it out of context, truncate it, twist it, and then take people to a place that's the opposite of what God actually said. Exactly what he did with Yahowah. It's exactly what he did through Paul. It's exactly what he did through Muhammad. He's a one-trick pony.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
what did this on that after a while?
You'd think you'd figure out that as many times as Yahowah has told us that Satan is beautiful. He tells us throughout the Proverbs, throughout the Psalms, throughout the prophets, that Satan is beautiful, elegant, dramatic, grandiose, that people would drop the stupidity of thinking that Satan is this horny dude with a pointy tail.
Yeah.
He's not. He's light. He's gorgeous.
Well, he blinded Paul so he couldn't see anything else.
That's right. You know, Yahowah gave sight to the blind.
Mm-hmm. He took it away.
Satan blinded the sighted.
Yeah.
Paul couldn't even walk anywhere. He was brought to the ground. Yahowah made the lame walk. Satan the other way around.
Think this through.
Yeah, think this through, folks.
These ain't the hard ones.
No, these aren't the hard ones. And so, what God just said is, she's crafty. She's concealed. Now, if you're Satan, and you were wanted and you were in fact concealed and crafty, would you appear to people as Satan?
Hardly.
Hardly. What do you think the word concealed means?
Yeah.
If you have a weapon to carry a concealed permanent weapon, is your gun front and center on your chest, painted and day glow orange, and it says "gun" on the front of it? It's concealed, folks. Satan is concealed and crafty, underhanded. In other words, he tries to appear the opposite of what he is. He is the adversary to Yahowah. By the way, adversary to Yahowah, it is true, he's the adversary. And he is in opposition to Yahowah, and Yahowah is opposed to him. They aren't, this isn't a Joe Frazier and Muhammad Ali.
No. No, it's not. There's no comparison here.
We're talking here Kirk and the Garden Slug.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and the Garden Slug's already shriveled up for being too long in the hot sun.
Too long in the hot sun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. But the point is that people have been beguiled by religion to think that Satan is this ugly caricature, when in fact he's so beautiful that he is actually the grandiose God of religion.
Mm-hmm.
He's the Lord in Christianity. He is Allah in Islam. He is man, of course, in secular humanism. So, there you go. Now, by the way, it also says that he is underhanded and evil of heart, character, motives, and judgment. One of the things that was interesting as I was reading the prophecy in Yahowah about the last days and the dealings that the elite of the world, the most powerful merchants, the most powerful politicians and religious clerics, that they will all galvanize and gain their authority on behest of the whore, on behest of the religion and Satan. And yet they will immediately turn against Satan.
Yeah.
And Satan will turn against them. Because, you know, here Satan made Paul all sorts of promises. I'm going to make you the most famous guy in the world. And Paul did become most famous, probably the single most influential person of all time.
Hard to dispute that.
Because it's certainly not Yahowah that's the most influential, because there's one person in a million that actually knows who he is, what he said, and what he did. But Paul, I would say, is easily the most influential person of all time. Muhammad probably the second.
Fair enough.
But both died miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Paul, you read Paul's last words to Timothy, and he said, everyone has abandoned me. He's in absolute agony as a human being. It's the nature of align yourself with a untrustworthy individual.
Well, I mean, think of the Roman emperors.
Ooh, they were all miserable.
The big ones that we were talking about the other day. I mean, horrible deaths.
Yeah, horrible deaths in most cases. Yeah, but there were even more miserable lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're always watching over their shoulder.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting, though, in Revelation. There's this line that just, I don't think anyone's ever figured out. And it's so enormously simple that it gives you the timeline for all of these things. And it talks about the timing of Paul's letters and of this beast that is a satanic envoy, a demon. And it says that 5 have fallen, 1 is, and 1 will come and will be for a little while. And then it talks about an eighth that is in league with, and one of the original 7. And you look at, okay, Yahowah wrote this in 68 CE. Before, actually during the very year, later that same year is when Rome would invade the province of Yahowah and destroy the temple in 70, but they invaded in 68. And so it's obvious that they hadn't invaded yet, or he would have mentioned it in Revelation, because it was such a major event in Jerusalem and Israel. As we wrote it in 68. And you look at, all right, he's speaking of the city on 7 hills being the ground zero for this whore, and this whore of religion that influences the world so negatively, and also becomes the one that inspires the Toralist one known as the Antichrist. And the city on 7 hills is Rome. And you look at Yahowah using the term there as a beast, and he says 5 were, 1 is, and 1 will come and will be for a little while. And you look at the imperial Rome. Mm-hmm. Up to that point, there had been exactly 5 Caesars. Mm-hmm. And you can delineate them all off as when they died. And there was a 6th that was currently ruling, a really despicable guy named Nero. Mm-hmm. He would die the following year. He's the one that was but will not be. And then the one who came, Vespasian. Oh, did he come all right? He's the one that led the legions into Israel. And he was on the throne for 10 years. And then you look at the 8th that is one of the 7, and I would say that next to Paul, the second most despised man in all of human history would be Hadrian. Yeah. Another Roman emperor. He led the second conquest against the province of Yahowah, but far worse. He wanted to name Jerusalem after himself, and wanted to build a temple to himself right on the Temple Mount. So you've got some real idiots there, but it also spoke of this demonic spirit having been but is no more, and it had just left Paul. Paul, the young man, was lacking judgment here with the following as he walks around the world of the Gentiles at the time. He had just died the previous year. You put the pieces together. It's all there for you. And so it says, she is disturbingly loud, creating a confusing commotion. And she is openly defiant and rebellious. Paul described 3 different times, and he has a different account all 3 times of what happened on the road to Damascus. But the voice was always loud. Mm-hmm. And since he couldn't even recall what the voice said, and has a different account, it was obviously confusing. And the fact is that the voice on the 3rd occasion cited the most famous line from Dionysus, it's difficult to kick against the goad. Uh-huh. It's funny. Paul got that line right. Never got a single line from you. Correct. Not one. No. But he got all that. He got Dionysus.
That's pretty bad for a rabbi.
Yeah.
1 in 100 million.
Yeah, he got Dionysus, that one right. I mean, you couldn't be more confusing. than that message. Even Paul was confused by what he said, and it was loud. It was so loud that everybody fell to the ground, whether there was nobody there or two other people there or or no witnesses or some witnesses, or they all fell or nobody fell, or they all saw it, nobody saw it, they all heard it, nobody heard it. Yeah, he doesn't quite know. Kind of like his journey to the seventh heaven, where he said, I don't know if I was there in body or spirit, but only God knows. Sounds like Allah in the Quran.
Well, juxtapose this to Paul. The passages we've been reading are divided up, of course, arbitrarily so we can find them. But Yahweh used in the last passage, he used, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's used 7 words, and now he's using 5 words to convey all these thoughts. Mm-hmm. English, by comparison, we have to use a ton of words to explain what all he's saying because we don't get all of that right immediately. And Paul, you can't understand nothing. I mean...
Yeah, as a matter of fact, she is disturbingly loud, putting a confusing commotion.
Yeah.
That's actually one word because the preposition for she is affixed to hama, which is the verb. So that's one word. And to convey its meaning, she is disturbingly loud, creating a confusing commotion. She is uproariously raging in a riotous snarl, flashy and flamboyant, a gaudy and garish, vulgar and angry drunkard, greatly desiring and yearning for stormy turmoil, furious hullabaloo, while soliciting great wealth, associated with hoon, which means to easily confuse, to distract, to dislocate, and to destroy. That's exactly what happened on the road to Damascus.
Right.
And even worse, when he said, he claimed on all 3 occasions that this voice said, why are you persecuting me? Now, the fact is that Paul could no more persecute God than I could.
No.
And so it is impossible that God would say, why are you persecuting me? He didn't even ask the Romans that. And they crucified him.
That's true.
When Satan was trying to torment him in the 40 days and 40 nights prior to his ministry, he didn't even ask Satan, why are you persecuting me?
Yeah.
When he was sent to Sheol on Matzah to perfect us, and we have a full accounting of what happened there, we never once hear, why are you persecuting me?
Yeah.
When the rabbinical types and the liberal political types were trying to trip him up, he never asked them, why are you persecuting me? When Shimon Kephesh, Peter, said, we ought not go back into Jerusalem, even to celebrate Passover, because of, they want to persecute you. Those are the facts. And he says, get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
And when he didn't say, no, you're right, they want to persecute me. I don't want to be persecuted. That sounds really bad. No. So we're going. Don't you understand? We're going. Yahushua would never say that. And so, even as you and I share this message, and people are critical of it, we don't ever say, why are you persecuting us?
No, I
don't care.
I never thought of that, no.
Never even dawn on you to think that way. And so here's a guy that is claiming, and even citing that line, it's difficult to kick against the goad means it's difficult for you to rebel
against me,
against religion. Yeah. Against religion. Dionysus' voice. That's the popular religion of the Greeks was based upon the dying and resurrected Son of the Sun, Dionysus. The Jesus of Christianity is based on Dionysus. Easter, based on Dionysus. Christmas, based on Dionysus. All right, keep in mind that God is addressing a whore that is lurking outside of his window, the window of his home in heaven. And he says that with this whore there's an individual man that is traveling around the world and and gathering an enormous following, and that all of those that are following this man and the intoxicated by the whore are stupid. They're irrational. They're ignorant. And then he's saying that this whore, who he, expects you to say, all right, we're not talking about a sex here. We're talking about someone who pretends affection for money, who feigns devotion, and that he expects you to say, all right, is there any place where God defines who the whore is and associates the whore with something that's important? And constantly the whore is being described as religious. For example, in Hosea, the first thing that Yahowah does with the prophet Hosea, whose name means salvation, is he says, I want you to understand why I'm divorcing Israel for unfaithfulness, for having breached the covenant. So what I want you to do is go to the temple down the street, the pagan temple, not Yahowah's home. You should go to a pagan shrine. And at all the pagan shrines, they had prostitutes. They were temple priestesses. That to make the religious experience more compelling, they would offer sex for a donation. And he said, I want you to go and one of those temple prostitutes, I want you to marry her. I want you to be married to a whore. So you understand what I'm dealing with Israel. Now, did he ask Hosea to go marry a whore that this was just the oldest profession? I'm out trying to make a living. I'm a sex worker? Or did he say, I want you to go to the religious institution and marry a religious whore? Who was Gomer?
Oh, those are his children.
Yeah. Gomer was not a woman trying to eke out a living to support her family by engaging in prostitution for money. Gomer was a religious whore, a religious prostitute. Right there, you ought to be able to put the pieces together and say, it's the whore of religion. But doesn't God go to great lengths to describe the whore as religious, as a reflection of a nation's culture, its religion, its politics? And doesn't he specifically associate the whore with Babylon, and Babylon with Satan, and Satan with religion?
Well, let me ask you, once you know the Nimrod Talmud story, how can you not see that everywhere?
And Semiramis is Astarte, the mother of God, the queen of heaven, and how the son impregnated the queen of heaven, the mother of God, so the virgin could deliver the child, and the Tammuz became the son of the sun. And at Tammuz you have Lent, which is weeping for Tammuz, which is now Lent, and it culminates with Easter Sunday, named after Astarte,
and you tell people
the Babylonian goddess.
They say, don't take my Easter away. And for God's sake, don't tell me about Christmas now. Ruin another holiday for me.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about...
Stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you look at the popularity of Easter and Christmas in the West, and you realize that God tells you the whole story about them, that you can look at any history book.
Yeah.
And he even tells you that religion is incorporated with Astarte, the queen of heaven, the mother of God. That's Satan's favorite trick pony.
Yeah.
And that Baal, the Lord, is Satan's favorite guise. And yet, they just emulate all of these religious ideals. God even goes so far as to say that the beast that tramples down the world, the most vicious beast ever conceived as an institution, grew directly out of Imperial Rome. Duh. What grew out of Imperial Rome? Look at your history. Look at the period from Constantine to Theodosius. Roman Catholicism.
Well, all the way up to the Holy Roman Empire. I mean, just...
Correct.
You have no rivals for that.
Correct. It's not hard to figure out. It's obvious. It's in your face. But the thing that you have to do to understand any of it is to care enough about this information, to observe it, and then to make connections so that you understand it. Anyway, it says, she is disturbingly loud, creating a confusing commotion. And she is openly defiant and rebellious. In her household, in keeping with her slanderous stance and covert manner, that's not a way to live. So God has previously told us, if you want to live, observe my Torah. And now he's saying, as it relates to this loudmouth, conniving, openly defiant and rebellious community, household, why don't you read Be'eth as the basis of covenant, in her covenant. Mm-hmm. Her slanderous stance and her covert manner, not a way to live. In fact, when Yahowah was specifically condemning Shaul and Chabauk, written exactly 666 years before Paul would pen his first letter, and he calls out Paul by name as Shaul and Chabauk. One of the things that God says is, none that choose to believe him will ever find any satisfaction. Right. God is saying here, you follow the household of the whore and the whore's troubadour, Paul. You'll not live. And that really is it. It's just live. God's not saying that if you are beguiled by Pauline Christianity, that you're going to be tormented in hell. No. It says you're not going to live. When you die, it's the end of your existence. You will have squandered your soul. Your soul will cease to exist. Now, influencing the way one conducts life, Panam, along the streets, in the most prominent places, establishing a base to compel, in the most spacious public squares, and beside every corner, she deceptively lurks, ready to deceitfully ambush. That is Proverbs 7:12. Right. I would like you to tell me, you're a student of world history, mm-hmm. In the Western world, throughout Europe and throughout the Americas, what institution do you find in the most prominent places, establishing large edifices in the most spacious public squares and along every street corner? What do you find?
Even if you went down the most famous economic street in New York,
Wall Street,
you'll hit one.
Yes, you will.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Temples, the steeples.
Right.
You can't paint Vermont
without a church steeple. Without a church steeple.
You can't avoid it.
Right. You cannot. You cannot paint a European city anywhere, any European city, without that skyline.
Giant cathedral.
With its spires of the cathedrals.
But I'm talking even little bitty towns all across America.
Oh, everywhere. Everywhere.
Canada is just...
Today I'm in Ohio. I don't think I've ever been in a place with more churches. Big churches. I mean, they have churches here that are city blocks. Mega churches. Mm-hmm. Roman Catholic to the max, this place. You know, every street. It seems like every corner. Certainly in the most prominent places. And, you know, there is nothing else like it. There is no other institution in the history of the world that has been so dominant in public squares and public places along every street corner. You know, even in the time of Carthage and Greece and Rome, you know, these pagan societies.
Well, that's usually just one giant temple.
That's right. They would build one giant temple
on the hill.
On the hill. Right. One giant, you know, and in Athens, there weren't temples on every street corner. There weren't There were marketplaces everywhere.
Sure.
But not temples.
No.
You know, the Parthenon was up there at the top. And, you know, if you wanted to go to the home of the gods, you had to go to Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus was the furthest from along the spacious squares of cities and corners of roads. The one thing that is just everywhere, is ubiquitous.
But you can't lay in wait. You can't lay in wait, if you want to use that analogy, unless you're around the corner where somebody comes around the corner where you get them.
Yeah. And so this is not only saying that you're going to find edifices built on the central squares and along the streets and on every corner, which there's only one institution that this fits, which is Christian churches. It says that in them, the whore of religion deceptively lurks, ready to deceitfully ambush, which means she ain't in there. The Satan, she isn't in there with the horns and the pointy tail. She ain't telling you, hey, the Lord is my title. No, she's deceptively pretending to be God. When you go in there and you bow down and you sing your songs and you read from your Christian New Testament,
you're told
you are worshiping Satan as God.
Yep.
That is what you're doing. Whether or not you know it or not, doesn't matter. That's what you're doing.
What's the word for lurk around, to ambush?
It is Arab. Arab.
I just thought it was funny.
Arab. Yeah, Arab.
Yeah.
Yeah, which word has become synonymous these days with Islam. Arab and Muslim are used to be synonymous, and it's true that virtually all Arabs are Muslims. All Muslims aren't Arab, but Arab has a lot of negative connotations: clandestine, covert, treacherous, false pretenses, stalking, artifice, trickery, maiming, killing prey. Yeah, Arab is not a good term. Not in Hebrew.
No.
And and by the way, in the Quran, they claim that it's Arabic. Where do you think they get Arabic and Arab?
Well,
what language?
It's still Hebrew.
It's Hebrew.
Yeah.
It's just like Satan in the Quran tells Muslims that which is good for them to eat is halal. And Yahowah tells us in Yahshua that halal is Satan's name. I'm just gonna put it right in your face. And of course, the Quran claims that it was revealed in perfect Arabic, and Quran is based upon the Hebrew word kara, which, by the way, means to read and recite. And here in the case, the Quran claims to be in perfect Arabic, and Yahowah says Arabic is that which is deceitful, deceptive, a ploy. It's covert, it's treacherous, it's deadly. I mean, you really don't have to be the sharpest tool in the drawer to figure this out.
No. Well, that's the encouraging part. It's really, if you really want to check this out, if you really want to figure out whether this is just a bunch of extrapolation on somebody's part, yours or mine or ours, it ain't so, pal.
Yeah.
You're very experts that everyone claims, tells them, their lexicons and so forth they can't hide it.
One of the nice things about an amplified translation is particularly the way they're done in these books. An observation for our time is available at the website blessyahowah.com, blessyahowah.com, and it will be linked to the Yada Yah website and to Introduction to God and Questioning Paul and the others, including Prophet of Doom. But it's presented in such a way that it is naturally just in the bold, and we've been sharing mostly the bold, a bit amplified, so that the translation is more complete. But then the basis of the Hebrew words that comprise the basis of those translations is presented in italics within a parenthetical. And then following that is an amplification of those words so that you have the full measure of what those words mean, including their related words and the roots. And so you can make the decision on your own accord. Do all of these things apply? Do some of them apply? To which one of these apply? Which ones can I reject? Which ones should I accept? Do they all apply? You can look them up and say, yeah, is this really a complete and accurate definition of this word? And after you've looked up, as you have probably done, 1,000 words over several thousand times, and you say, yeah, that's an accurate, that is what the word means, then after a while you might just want to read it.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I started, what I would do is I would read the bold print, and then I would read the commentary, and then I would go back and break down all the words, you know, in yours, and then I got to the point where I started, okay, let's make sure we're right, and then I started going through the lexicons, and then I just added more and more research material so I could make sure I could go it from every other angle. But whichever way you do it to make it comfortable is not a hard read.
No.
And it's certainly, you don't have to look at every word all the time. After a while, you know.
Yeah. You know, I think that, you know, I actually think there's enormous benefit in doing what you did, which is that, first of all, we ought not trust anybody. We ought to trust Yahowah. He is trustworthy. But any individual who's trying to convey as accurately and completely what he had to say is naturally flawed. You know, we have our own biases. My bias just happens to be that I like the God that revealed this information as he presented himself. You know, I really like his accessibility, his sense of humor, his style. And so I have a tendency to look at everything he says and render it in a manner that's consistent with the God I've come to know and love. That's my prejudice. And so I'll state that right up front. And I also state that I'm flawed and that, you know, I've got no, I'm never going to say that I have credentials that will impress anybody. So the smartest thing you could do is to go check it.
Sure.
Because your soul's at stake. Go check it. Go check it. You know, be self-reliant in this regard. Make it an important aspect of your life to verify for yourself what God had to say. Now, I'm going to help you because I'm going to tell you, here's the alphabet these words were written in, and these what the letters themselves mean.
Yeah.
Here's the lexicons that you can use. Here's the interlinears that you can use. Here's the oldest extant manuscripts. And here's how to use them. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go through the Hebrew grammar, and we're going to expose what the stems represent in terms of relationships and what the conjugations represent in terms of ongoing or completed behaviors, that Hebrew has no verbs that are stuck in time, that they're all liberated in time. And we're going to talk about the volitional moods. And then we're going to go through thousands and thousands and thousands of statements that Yahowah made using those tools, so you get to see how they're deployed. And then if there's something that's really challenging, we're going to write paragraphs about it that explains, here's the thought process and the information that was available to deduce these conclusions and what your options are regarding these conclusions.
Right.
And, you know, you do that, and then you go off and you say, all right, I'm going to do it first to verify it, which is what you did. But that's not why you do it anymore. You do it now because you learn so much more.
Yeah, it's fun to dig, and you do.
Yeah, you learn so much more. But beyond learning so much more, there's an aspect to comprehension. You know, when Yahowah says, I want you to treasure my Torah, and I want you to inscribe it on your heart, there's a process that we can use to accomplish that. And that is when, if you're listening to this program and you've heard us read a passage, for example, you don't own that material. You now know it, but your memory will be fleeting. If you then go and you look up the chapter that it was written and you read it, you'll be closer to retaining it, but you still won't own the material. If then you read it, you read the commentary that's about it, you think of what was said about it, and you go back through it a third time, and you're really thoughtful about it, and you challenge what is said, and you try to apply what's said, then you're probably going to remember it. I don't think you own it still. You don't own it until you've invested something of yourself in the process of understanding it, and then you've actually applied it.
Yeah.
Then you own it. Then you've inscribed it on your heart, on your seat of judgment. Then it frames the perspective from which you look at the world. And when you do what you do, Kirk, you transition from being aware to knowing
to understanding,
right, to owning it.
Yes, I think so. I mean, you can't snatch this away from me, no matter how good old Paul is. You just ain't gonna have it.
Yeah, you own the material, and when you own the material, that's and by the way, you can own material both good and bad.
Sure.
I own Islam, man. I mean, I own that material.
Yeah.
I mean, when I own it, it's impossible for somebody to fool me on Islam. There is no argument you can bring on behalf of Islam that I cannot refute. And there's no way for anyone to refute any argument that I bring against Islam.
No.
Because I don't only know the material and understand the material, I own the material. And as it relates to the Torah, I'm certain there's people that know the Torah better than I do. I'm certain that there's people who are more scholastic than I am. But I know what God said.
Yeah.
I understand what He said. And I own this material.
Right.
I've applied it. I've invested in it. I've come to make it not only part of the fabric of my life, but it's the perspective that I evaluate everything.
Yeah.
And you're in the same spot. Larry's in the same spot. So many of our covenant family are in that same spot. There's no belief. There's no doubt. We know.
Now, isn't that interesting, though, that you throw something out, and I can debate that, and I can look it up and check it, and I'm not hostile to you, and if you said these same things to a Christian, and I was one, I mean, but when you said it to me, I knew a lot of these things were true that you were saying, so that's a little different, but most Christians, you throw this out, and it so challenges them that they either do like the people that do to Larry, just
reject him.
Start quoting Paul and tell him he's a jerk.
Right.
Or they just walk away. For me, if I get a chance to talk to anybody for any length of time, they just walk away. They just, like, don't do this to me. Don't take my Paul.
Yeah, that's right. Don't take my precious Jesus. Don't take my precious Jesus.
I'm going, well, don't you want to know the guy's real name?
No. No,
they don't.
No. No, you've got to be willing to be invested in the material. That's why God shuns airheads. He said, if you're an airhead, you're going to be religious. We got nothing to talk about. I can't reason with you. There were 3 passages that we've uncovered just in this new book, where God uses a term where He says, and He's speaking to religious people. He said, I cannot comprehend them. I don't understand. They make no sense to me. I can't comprehend them. I cannot endure them. In other words, I can't stand to be around them. And number 3, I can't save them. So God specifically says of the thoughtless religious people who are unwilling to engage in this process of investigation, of observation, of contemplation, of understanding, and ultimately owning the material by applying it. And He says that those who are unwilling to do these things, He says, I do not understand them. I cannot comprehend them. It's just like the garden slug. The garden slug may be communicating, but man, it's just nothing but burps and spitting to me. He says, I cannot endure being around them. I'm not fond of being around garden slugs either. I think they're really yucky. Can't endure it. Don't want to be around them. Can't understand them. Don't want to be around them. Can't fix them. Can't save them. And if you are one of the thoughtless religious people, He's speaking to you.
What a horrible thing if you're religious and you read that.
Yeah. Oh, you never read it because that requires a thoughtful analysis of the Word.
Yeah.
You know, you'd have to look up what the word means. You can't just read your King James Bible.
No.
You've got to actually look up the Hebrew word. So what does this word mean? It means, and it was negated with lo, and so it means I can't endure, I can't comprehend, I cannot salvage. Cannot salvage. Can't save. Can't rescue. Can't fix. You know, a friend of mine that I was partnered with in my last business, he said, you can fix a lot of things, but you can't fix stupid. So I'm saying I can fix a lot of things. You know, if you look at Dode. Dode did a lot of dumb stuff. And God fixed everything that Dode did. Because Dode was brilliant. But, you know, God can't fix stupid.
No. So you don't have to be stupid. You don't have to be ignorant. I mean,
you do not have to be ignorant.
We all have different levels of intellect, but you can grasp this. He writes plain enough that a child can understand this. And certainly because parents can teach their children, he encourages it to. So
I'll bet you that, Kirk, you spent as much time in the theological classes as I did. I'll bet you spent as much time in Hebrew class as I did. I'll bet you that you spent as much time studying to be a religious scholar as I did.
I'm sure you would be correct there.
Yeah. And if you were to combine our investment in religious scholarship, theology, and language.
We're a big fat zero.
I spent more time consuming my sandwich for lunch today.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to take a different approach and say, well, how much time have you invested in Yahowah's testimony? Well, for me, it's been better part of 6 days a week for 15 years, an average of probably 10 hours a day.
I think we're well into 8 years, I think, now. So.
Yeah. That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. It's every day.
A lot of time. Yes, indeed. And she establishes her influence over him, harshly, overpowering and binding him. Him, by the way, masculine, singular. One man.
Right.
So here is the whore, Satan, establishing her influence over him. And people get caught up and say, well, the whore of Babylon, that's feminine, and Satan, the adversary, is masculine.
But she's kissing him. It's a him.
Folks, spiritual entities do not have sexuality.
Yeah.
Spiritual entities have a feminine and a maternal and parental, fatherly, paternal nature. And so Yahowah, for example, expresses his paternal nature as the father of the covenant. Yahowah expresses his maternal nature as our spiritual mother, the set-apart spirit. And so every aspect of the things that are important to Yahowah are conveyed as either feminine or masculine based upon what aspect of Yahowah's nature is being conveyed. Yahowah's spirit. He is not a sexual being. Satan is light, an energy-based spiritual being. Satan is not a sexual being. And so Satan, like Yahowah, has the ability to manifest aspects of his nature in a feminine way and in a masculine way. He is the adversary from a masculine perspective, and Satan is the whore, manifesting Satan's feminine characteristics. The church, for example, of Satan, feminine. So, in this particular case, she, the whore of religion, is focusing her seduction to overpower and bind a single individual, Paul.